Well, it's that time of year again. The rainbow garbs come out, the bisexual makeup comes on, the bisexual lighting goes on, the bisexual bottle gets brought out to sip from. Grab your little gay friends, get a drink of bisexual water or gay water or asexual water, whatever water you drink, and let's just jump into it with LGBTQ manga suggestions part 2. So hello everybody, my name is Brooklyn, otherwise known as the Dramatic Otaku. I'm going to put my little friend Hello Kitty behind the camera because she doesn't really need to be here. And welcome to LGBTQ manga recommendations or queer manga recommendations from myself, a queer person. Now before we begin, I do want to make a little notation on my labels from last year, as I came out as bisexual on my channel last year. Bisexual referring to me being more comfortable in that label than any other labels under the multisexuality umbrella. I personally am actually queer, that's the label that I prefer to go by, though if I have to explain it to someone who is cishet, I will just say I'm bisexual because it's the easiest thing to explain. And my pronouns are she, her, and they, them. Please use them at your discretion. And last year I made a video about some queer manga recommendations that I had for you guys, as I have an extensive manga collection, and of course a lot of them have LGBTQ characters, meanings, and are just straight up gay manga. Some of them are just claimed by the gay community and we will be talking about more of those recommendations today. But what was in my last video? Let's go through a lightning round. Given, hello relationship, thigh high, go for it, Nakamura. Heartstopper, you knew this one was coming. Oran High School Host Club, Sailor Moon, Revolutionary Girl Uchena. Now this is Dakoboku Sugar Days, My Love Mix Up, Whisper Me a Love Song. I think our son is gay. That blue sky feeling. So, unlike last year where I went through manga that was claimed by the queer community, manga that is specifically about queer people and that are the most well known, versus manga that I recommend that are less well known, I'm instead going to be going by different subsections of the queer community, of the LGBTQ plus community, mainly focusing on queer relationships and gender identity. There is also a revision to some of the series that I suggested last year, as I have read more of those series and not just one volume of a novel. I have collected more of these series, so I have a better understanding and can more better suggest it to you. But I will go in line with one element from last year's video, that being a manga that was claimed by the queer community that isn't actually necessarily queer. Last year it was Sailor Moon and Oran, this year it is Nana. So Nana has been mostly claimed by queer women, despite the fact that neither of the protagonists are actually gay. It is mostly because of the closeness of our two Nanas in this story that this queerness has come out. Now, I will make a disclaimer, many queer women don't actually like Nana because they think it is queer baiting. I personally am not of the same opinion, though that's probably because I also read a lot of heteronormative romances as well. Maybe that's not your thing. But just a disclaimer, the two main characters are not actually gay, but this story has actually been claimed by the queer community because of the closeness of its two female protagonists. So if you like that kind of thing and are interested in Nana, then I would give it a go and a suggestion. It's definitely a very good read for those who are in the alternative community, maybe those who like Vivian Westwood as well. So if you like those kinds of things, then I'd give Nana a shot. But again, this is a straight manga with queer themes that has been adopted by the queer community. That is my first recommendation. Now that we've got the straight ones out of the way, let's get into my first set of actual recommendations, this being around transgender representation in manga, as it is really hard to come by. So I have two physical novels here and I have an online recommendation for everyone centered around a transgender protagonist, starting with Boys Run the Riot. Now, Boys Run the Riot is basically a story that explores the connection of fashion and gender identity with our main protagonist Rio, a trans man, as well as the connection of graffiti and street fashion. So Rio is obviously a trans man living in the body of a woman and has to forcibly present as a woman when at school. He can't tell anyone that he is trans for fear of being bullied. Until he meets Jin. Now Jin is a transfer student from the year above who has had to repeat a year. Rio doesn't think he's going to actually interact with Jin at all because he's scary until he runs into him at his favorite store in the men's section. Jin confronts Rio and they soon start a street fashion brand together. Jin fully recognizing Rio as a man, the first person to actually do so. I honestly love this story for some of its artwork, as it's really expressive, such as this piece at the end of chapter, I believe it's 1. I honestly fucking adore it. Now, I personally have slightly mixed feelings about this book, but I do find it to be awesome representation, especially since transgender representation in manga is so very niche. So for a recommendation for a trans mass character, especially if you love street fashion, this is definitely a book to go with. It has fantastic visuals, it has amazing art, and personally it is definitely a book to pick up if you want transgender representation in a book, especially for a main character that isn't a side character that's often played up. Now, this next recommendation I do have to put a trigger warning on for suicide and I believe assault at one point, but that is the story of Claudine. Now, Claudine is the romance drama of a trans man living in the early 20th century and his multiple lovers and multiple loves throughout his life. Now, I will not give spoilers for this book, however, it has a very sad ending, and if anything that I have said could possibly trigger you, then I wouldn't suggest this book, though it is a very beautiful book with a lot of very gorgeous shoujo arts in it, and it's made by the same person as The Rose of Versailles, so I would recommend this as it does have a trans character, though with it being set in the 20th century, Claudine unfortunately has to present as female to other characters and is referred to as a woman by other characters, with the exception of Rosemary, who is a character who chases Claudine but isn't actually one of Claudine's romantic interests. So I would give this a suggestion for a more romantic story, though it does have potentially triggering content in it, though it is a lot about the gender expression of Claudine himself. Now, my last suggestion is online and doesn't really have a physical book, and that is Kanojo ni naretai kimi to boku. I have so absolutely butchered that name, but if you've been on TikTok and have searched for trans manga on TikTok, this is definitely one that has come up, and it goes through the life of Akira and her friend Hime Sakuragaiki. Akira is trans and Hime is trying her most to be an ally to Akira, but in this process has a bit of a gender and sexuality crisis. So this manga goes through the high school experience of Akira, a trans woman, and Sakuragaiki, her ally friend. Though in this story, Hime goes through a kind of gender and sexuality crisis, not understanding if her feelings for Akira are not only platonic or romantic, but also are because she sees Akira as a man or if she sees Akira as a woman. Obviously there is a lot of romance drama. The main teacher of these characters is asexual. The best friend character, or one of the best friend characters, is a lesbian, so there's good representation there. I will note that for this series it is a little bit preachy and a slice of life, so it is more boring to myself, but it is a good representation of a trans femme character, though there is depictions of bullying towards Akira, so please read at your own discretion, though as compared to the likes of Claudine, it is much more toned down. Now, a demographic that I didn't get a book for last year in my video, and that I haven't actually seen a lot of in manga, is for people of the RA spectrum. Luckily this year I have 2 recommendations. Now unfortunately I haven't really read them. I am in the midst of reading one, and both of these stories are by the same author, and this author being Uta Isaki. And my first recommendation is Love the Answer. There is a trigger warning on the very first page, on the contents page. Now, I'm going to give a major trigger warning for this novel, as there is almost immediate depictions of sexual assault in the beginning of this book. So if you are triggered by that sort of content, or are particularly sensitive to that kind of content, then this one might actually have to be a skip. Now, I picked this one up because, as you can see on the spine, it is the ace flag. I knew I had to pick this up and review it because I have never seen a distinctly ace or aro book out there. Usually characters who are asexual or aromantic are side characters in a lot of media and manga. So to have a protagonist who is ace and aro and who is exploring that concept as the main character is incredible, even though I'm not ace aro myself. I had to recommend this. Again, this is for people on the ace aro spectrum, and I just thought it was a fantastic point of representation, as I have literally never seen a book with an asexual or aromantic character as the protagonist, so I would suggest this one.
But I do have an update to Is Love the Answer, as it is much more coherent than what I explained in my actual recording, as I have actually read the book now. So Is Love the Answer follows our protagonist Chika as she discovers herself in university and comes to realize that she is not only asexual, but is hinted to also be aromantic. I honestly love this, as it goes into the nuances of asexuality, but on extension, it also goes into the nuances of queerness. Chika, being an openly asexual character, protagonist even, is something that attracted me to this novel, and as a person who has been trying to find more queer manga, finding this in Dimmicks, which is the Barnes & Noble of Australia, was honestly fantastic to have something so readily available in a commercial store that is queer, especially during Pride Month. I'd recommend this book, probably the highest of all on my list, as it not only explains and goes into asexuality for people who don't quite understand nuances of asexuality like myself, but it does it in an entertaining way, and you are essentially exploring asexuality at the same rate that Chika is in the book. All the characters in the novel are entertaining and varied, unlike the archetype for most asexual coded characters and even just queer characters in general. I also love that this book has references to specific queer books and papers, like actual exam styled references at the bottom of pages that is being referenced, so people can actually go and do their own research.
And the other novel by the same creator is Mine-kun is Asexual. Now, I have not read that novel. I cannot give any warnings for that novel if there is triggering content in there. We move right along past those into our gays. We love the gays. Now, I am going to start with a correction on one of my volumes from last year, this being I Think Our Son is Gay. Now, I only had one novel last year. As you can see, I now have 3, and if you've been keeping up with my otaku review or weeb wrap-ups, which is my bi-monthly manga review series, then you would know my opinions on I Think Our Son is Gay. Personally, this is my absolute favorite queer manga series, as this series is from the mother of a gay child who has not come out of the closet yet, and the quiet allyship that she is trying to show to her son to make her son feel safe enough to come out. though she lives in a family where her husband is quite homophobic and a lot of homophobic actions are being shown to her children. I personally love this novel series because as it progresses, you get a lot of, while very simple and what you would think to be like common knowledge things, it shows very like simple lessons to be learned in very entertaining ways, such as how people who aren't queer can approach queer people and interact normally. Probably my favorite volume of the series thus far has to be volume 3, as it not only talks about the topic of BL and how like you can have BL but also realize that real gay people aren't your little playthings in your little gay books. I love that how that is handled in this book, as well as the fact of presuming someone's sexual identity based off your preconceived notions on what is feminine and what is masculine. Basically, not judging a book by its cover, but also not being prejudiced by your preconceived notions of what is feminine, what is masculine. I love how the series approaches that. I really think this is very ally friendly.
I just want to say I'm part of the Lgbtqia community, and this is my best friend Valentina. She's an ally. Talk, Valentina.
Ally.
And by that I mean if you want to sort of understand how to get a better ally, then I would suggest kind of reading these books, as this is more so from an ally's perspective than a gay person's perspective, but has been clearly written by someone who is either queer or very intertwined with the queer community, as it has some very, very good points. I honestly love this book. Volume 3 personally is my favorite. I would love to get a 4th volume of this series. And yeah, I would highly, highly, highly recommend this series. I think Our Son is Gay. It is fantastic. Probably my highest recommendation of all of them today. But moving into a newer recommendation that I have, this is for my horror fans and fans who are slightly more fans of dramatic and BL type novels, as we talk about The Sleeping Dead. Now, warning for mentions of sexual assault and gore, as this is a psychological gore horror novel. You have been warned. This doesn't do what most BL do that include depictions of sexual assault, which is glorify it. No, it actually denounces it, though because it is a 2-volume series, it is very, very brief, and there is only 1 volume that is translated in English online. As I've mentioned in the past, I will be purchasing both volumes because I actually think it's a really good, if not BL, it's a fantastic simple horror. It also has a very unconventional male love interest, and unconventional by like Western beauty standards. He's a balding man with a lot of grey facial hair, but is pretty much 30. So, an adult. This story is basically between a mad scientist and his science experiment, that being a man who was brought back from the dead, thus The Sleeping Dead. This is a very simple and well executed BL, as well as a very simple and executed horror. Now, the things that you would think to be the gory part of a BL doesn't happen here. There's no kinky stuff here. But it is very gory, so this is more for my horror fans who are into BL than for my people who like queer romance. But yeah, so there's only 1 volume that is currently translated in English. I will be getting both volumes, but in Japanese, so hopefully I'll be able to read the 2nd volume eventually. On to my next set of manga suggestions, this being lesbian yuri suggestion. This is my longest section, if you can tell by the chapter at the bottom of the screen. That is because I have 2 revisions. This one isn't really a revision, but we're going to be starting with Whispering a Love Song, which is one of my favorite like soft fluffy romances that is queer. It has a lot of female pairings. There's pretty much no straight pairings and no gay pairings. It's predominantly lesbian relationships, and it is a band. Basically, our two protagonists here are Yuri and Hikari. Hikari has seen Yuri perform at the welcome introduction for new students, though Yuri was doing it as a favor to her friend. Now, Hikari has gone up to Yuri and said that she loves Yuri, but Yuri, not understanding Hikari, means that she loves her in a platonic way. Throughout the series, there is a lot of drama that goes on, and it turns from this being a platonic friendship to a romantic one, and other relationships are brought into the fray. This is more of a soft, fluffy romance story between our two main characters and a dramatic side story between Yuri and the former band member of the band that she replaced. So this is a series that I would absolutely suggest, mainly because it is very dramatic, which is what I love to see in queer stories, because we're all dramatic. I personally love queer romances that are also not super drama heavy, but have something going on for it that isn't just the fluffy romance and has something after the romance has started. Now, this is all set in high school. If you want a queer lesbian romance that goes on, that goes for adults, then I would suggest How to Be a Relationship. Now, much like Is Love the Answer, last year I suggested this without having really read the series because I only had volume 3. Now, over Christmas, I have gotten the first 2 volumes and I'm going to be getting more. So How to Be a Relationship is the love story between our protagonists, Miwa and Seiko. Now, our college age, I believe they're 18 in this series, so our main characters, Miwa and Seiko, explore a relationship throughout the beginnings, and when I mean beginnings after they've agreed to start dating, the working out of a relationship and how a relationship works. Thus the name How Do We Relationship. Now, I will say this is so painfully accurate to how a relationship starts and how awkward it is, and just figuring out all the kinks. I will also say that this has a very positive relationship with sex, as there is some depictions of sex within these novels, but it's not in the same way that you would expect sex in a BL, if that makes sense. It's not very fetishized sex, it's just a positive depiction of sex, pretty much. But this is the first time where I've ever seen a novel so normally incorporate sex into the story, and it's not just sex between our protagonists, it is also sex of other characters. Like, my favorite character is a little bit of a slut and I fucking love her. You'll pretty much figure out who she is almost immediately, but this is definitely an adult romance that I would very much recommend to those who are interested. I do have a complicated opinion about this series, but you will probably have to go to the Weeb wrap up for that. This is definitely a suggestion that I recommend. Now, my last physical manga to recommend is Yuri Esper. Now, this is about the main character, Kokoro, as she is being put into an arranged marriage with a man, but she is also a hopeless lesbian. And she and her friend, who she doesn't realize is hopelessly in love with her, go around where they usually live and draw random people and imagine what their lives are like together in these romantic scenarios, particularly women, so that when Kokoro is eventually married off, she can look at this sketchbook full of people, full of these scenarios, and just imagine her life if she was in fact with a woman instead of being married to a man. So, maladaptive daydreaming meets lesbians. Now, this story does something very unique where all of the characters on the cover that aren't the actual main couple do have a chapter dedicated to what Kokoro thinks is happening in their lives, and then shows a one shot of what their actual lives are like, and I find it absolutely fantastic. I will say, however, one of these couples is 13 and 13. I don't know how I feel about that. All of the other ones are kind of like, this couple's 16, this couple's like in their mid-30s. This couple are like 20. So like having two 13-year-olds is a little bit weird to me, but whatever. This is very, very fluffy and lighthearted and also a little bit dramatic. It is more dramatized than what you would have thought. I will absolutely be picking up the second volume of this because I just think it's really fun. And this is what this is what I like to see in a lot of queer manga, just fun and having fun. A lot of the manga that I have recommended is the same, where it's just fun, but this is just very like fluffy and funny, and I really, really enjoy it. If you do like lesbian romance, then I would suggest this. It's very dramatic and it's also so fucking relatable. Anyway, so moving on to my last suggestions, which are sort of just like online suggestions that you can read. They're not necessarily my top tier suggestions, but they're yuri romance that I have found, so I would somewhat suggest it. First, I'm with Rocket Girl. This one isn't the cleanest. It is a very, very short read with clocking in at 12 chapters and is super over dramatized, a little bit all over the place, but I kind of find it just really funny, though I do feel like it was cut very short. And this is the romance between a singer by a songwriter who can't sing and her singer muse, as they are put into a band called Rocket Girl with two grown adults who are just like, who are these fucking children? The main characters are 19, I believe, in the story. But it's just, again, a bit of dumb fun romance. There isn't a whole lot of like romance in it. It's kind of just a dumb fun story about girls in a band and they just happen to be gay. And it's a little bit absurd as well, so I would recommend that a little bit. And the final one that I would recommend isn't actually a manga. It is an online ongoing series called The Guy She Was Interested Wasn't a Guy at All. This is a series that is ongoing on Twitter. However, it has been translated and put on translation websites. I personally really adore this because it is another two girls who love music and share the same interest in music thing, though one is kind of in a Princess and the Pauper situation. Our main protagonist is a girl who works at a music shop and dresses one way at this music shop that her uncle owns, but dresses in a completely different way when she goes to school. And the school gyaru, who sits next to her in class, doesn't recognize her when she goes to the other girl's uncle's music shop. And when they interact, the gyaru thinks that this other girl is a cute guy, and thus a romance starts to blossom as the gyaru realizes that this guy isn't a guy at all and she actually really likes girls. So that's really cute. I find it really fun. Again, this is a translated online comic, so it's on a translation website, though you can find the original artist on Twitter. But that has been all of my recommendations, my queer manga recommendations for this year. I wish I could have gone further into them, but I'm kind of running on fumes right now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next year, I guess, for the same kind of video. I was hoping to do a different video this year, but having read so much more queer manga this year, I figured I would just make a sequel to that last video, so I guess I'll make another one like this next year. Otherwise, I will see the rest of you next week. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I would very much appreciate it. If not, thank you guys for watching so much, and I will see you guys next week at 10 AM Australian Eastern on a Wednesday. Bye!